All right. Oh no, there we go. So today I am going to be talking about the claim evidence reasoning. There we go. Kind of like a baseline. So we're going to be working on this for the next couple days. You are not going to get different lessons when you're in person versus when you're virtual for this one. So it's a little bit different. So when you are working virtually, you do need to make sure that you are actually working or you're actually going to miss out a lot on what's going on. So a CER, claim evidence reasoning, is a way that we talk about scientific argument. It is how we use evidence from the things that we have done from scientific studies to back up what our main idea or argument is. So our language objective for this is I can create an argument writing that is supported by credible science using research skills, a graphic organizer, and teacher mini lessons. A rough calendar here, and it might change as we go, but a rough calendar for you is we're going to introduce it to today. We're going to start research with the source that I've given you on Wednesday. You're going to do research again on Thursday, and Friday you are working on a graphic organizer. Monday I'll talk about what it's going to look like, the actual claim, evidence, and reasoning parts. And then Tuesday or Wednesday, whenever you're in person, you are actually going to be writing. So the topic that we are going to talk about is COVID. So some things to talk about. This is something that people right now have made very political. We are going to stick with the science. So you are going to use research to determine the scientific argument. But when we are talking about COVID, we do need to set some parameters. So you can use things like COVID or coronavirus or COVID-19. We shouldn't be using just corona or we shouldn't be using Rona. Remember that the coronavirus, if you haven't yet heard this, but I'm sure you have with how much has been in the news, COVID-19 is a specific kind of coronavirus. There are multiple kinds of coronavirus. COVID-19 is the specific one that we are talking about now. So the more specific you can be with it, the better off we are going to be in terms of talking about it scientifically. So getting a little more specific. So COVID's a really big topic. Okay. Some areas that you can argue about. You can argue about masks, vaccines, spreading, social distancing, quarantining, working from home, vulnerable populations, washing your hands, sanitizing, pretty much anything within there. The biggest thing is we are going to be working on reliable resources. So you will get to state your claim, what you believe it is, and then what we have to do is we have to back that up with reliable resources. So that's what today is actually about. Today we're going to start talking about what a reliable resource is and how we find them. With topics that are super current and super modern, with topics that are super current and super modern, we do have to check a little bit more, especially on issues that have made it to the political sphere. That is something that we need to be very cautious of. So there are a few different things. We're actually going to use a checklist, but in general, it comes down to these big four ideas. Authority. Who's saying it? If you have a problem with your car, you could ask a mechanic, someone who specializes in working in cars, or you could ask someone who works at Subway. Which of those two would you ask if you have an issue with your car? Probably the mechanic, right? They're considered an expert in their field. If you had a question about making sandwiches or sandwich etiquette, then you would probably be asking the mechanic, you probably wouldn't be asking the mechanic, you'd probably be asking the Subway person. So who is saying it? We want to make sure that we are looking at scientific people who are talking about this. That means that we are not getting our information secondhand from political figureheads. This would be either of the candidates who are currently running for president. Okay? We want to make sure that we're talking about it with people who have studied this, scientists, people who have we're looking for direct quotes from doctors, people who are experts in the field of science. So remember, we're taking a purely scientific approach. We are not trying to get into the political. We are in science class. We're just trying to stay on the science focus. So the purpose, why are they saying it? What's their purpose? Do they want to spread more information? Do they want to encourage you to try a certain thing? Why are they saying it? The accuracy and the verifiability. Basically, can we check other sources? Are other sources going to say the same thing? One thing that makes science really, really strong is when you can take that same experiment and you can repeat it over and over and over and over again. The more times you can repeat it, the more accurate it is in claiming that something works. That's how we get things like the theory of gravity and the theory of relativity. All of those are basically big experiments that we prove over and over and over and over and over again. And then finally, currency and relevance. How new is this information? If we're talking about current coronavirus issues, right, we're not going to look back in March and look at something that happened a while back if we are trying to find things about the vaccine that should be coming out soon. Okay? So we are making sure that we are looking at when this was published and how new it is, but that also comes with a grain of salt, because if something was published yesterday, we might not have any sources to check it yet. To do this, we are actually going to use a specific checklist put out by MLA. So MLA is that language arts group that has a specific way of formatting things. So this is how they check if things are reliable. So when you're looking at authority, you have to check to see if the name is clearly there, if you can find a link or find the author's credentials. What do they do? What makes them someone who can talk about this? What makes them someone who would be an expert in this? You want to make sure that they're held accountable for what they're writing. Is there evidence that the source went through a review process? Was it peer-reviewed? Was it looked at by an editor or an advisory board? Was there somebody who stopped it and checked it? Basically, what we don't want is somebody going on their blog and posting whatever they would like. Like you guys think of Wikipedia frequently, where somebody and anybody can just edit and change things. We want to make sure that somebody's there checking it. Can you find the group that is published it? Sometimes it's a scientific group. Sometimes it is somebody who is paying for it to be published. If you think about somebody who might be writing an article on the new McDonald's cheeseburger, okay, and you see at the bottom that says sponsored by McDonald's, okay, you know that that's an ad. You know that that is something that the person who is publishing it or sponsoring it might have a little money going in there, so they think a certain way. Same thing with what you see on Instagram and YouTube. Those things that they have to disclose, those are ads, things that they got paid to say these things. Okay. Is the publisher or organization reputable? Have they been around for a while? Do they frequently post things that are good information or reliable information? Or do they frequently post things that are incorrect information? I think of the magazines of the Inquirer, where they would frequently have things like UFO abducted family of 17 now back on Earth, or Bigfoot bought a Starbucks coffee in California this week. Okay? Things that you're like, okay, they've consistently posted things that are not so truthful, so maybe we want to stay away from them. Okay? And that does it appear to be carefully prepared, well written, not a bunch of typing errors, easy to read, that kind of stuff. Next is the purpose. Okay. Why was it written? Does it tell you? Does it look like it's supposed to sell something? Is it supposed to educate you or inform you? Does it give you opinions or does it give you facts? Is it trying to be funny? People often get tripped up with a group called The Onion, where they are satirical articles or satire, where they're intentionally written to look real, but they are funny articles. They're supposed to make fun of things. So is it supposed to be something that is factual, or is it supposed to be something that's funny? And is it trying to entertain you? If an article is trying to entertain you, you know it's probably not trying to teach you. Okay. Accuracy and verifiability. Okay. So does the work or the document source the information? Does it tell you where it got it? Especially on topics like we're going to be reading. I don't expect you to read medical journals. A lot of the stuff that's published in the medical field is going to be way above our reading level and way above our heads in terms of our understanding. So what we're actually going to look for are direct quotes or summaries, and we're going to look for sources where somebody actually says hey, I got this from here. Is there contact information? Can you get a hold of the people if there's something that you disagree with or that you find facts against? And does it appear to be well researched? Can you find the information if you were to click on those links? And finally, currency and relevance. Does it tell you when it was published? Does it suggest that it's sufficiently current? So is it modern enough to be accurate? Again, going back to that example of like, we're not going to look for things in January on COVID when we have a lot more new information that's more modern. And then, are there any indications that the source has been influenced? So like copied and pasted and shared by other people, discussed by other people, reviewed. So if a lot of people are sharing it, talking about it, republishing it, and discussing it, kind of in an academic way, specifically for what we're looking at, then it could be current and relevant. So basically this checklist, you'll go through and make check marks on it, or you can read through them and keep track of it. But there are a total of 18 check marks. If it comes up with 13 or more, then it is probably a reliable resource, something that we can use. If it comes up with less than 13, it is probably not reliable, and it's probably not something that we're going to want to use. So I wanted to do an example with you. Okay. We will be working off of this graphic organizer here in Google Classroom. So I have this article, okay, and I picked something from a little while ago that just talks about what it is. What is the coronavirus? So I'm in the Science News for Students, and I am going to run through my checklist. Okay. I have a paper copy here. You'll have a paper copy when you're in class. Okay. First things first, can I see the author of the paper? Yep, right here. So that would be one check mark. One check mark. Can you find a link to the author's credentials? Well, let's see what happens when I click on it. Oh, yeah, I can. Okay, so she is a senior writer. She studies molecular biology and science news. Okay, so she was a geneticist, somebody who studies genetics, and now she does writing, and then it tells her all of her credentials. So, okay, I feel like this is a pretty good, I can give that a second check. Okay. Evidence that it went through a review process. So let's go back to the article. So let's see, what do we have? I'm seeing some pull-out quotes. Okay, I see power words out here, so words that might be important for us to know with definitions. Ooh, I see citations, that's coming out there. I'm not necessarily seeing that it was reviewed. However, this is Science News for Students, so I do know that it is. This is something that we will consider a reliable resource across all of our research, so I can guarantee that this one actually is based on research that I've done. So if you are unsure about that long term, I am there to help you with some of them. Can we find the name of the publisher? I think I saw one at the bottom. Nope, those are our citations. So the publisher is Science News for Students, right down here. Award-winning online publication, age-appropriate science news. It's run for a nonprofit, okay? And it's supposed to encourage education. So that's going to come up to us again. So I'm going to say, yes, I can find it. And yes, it is reputable, meaning they've published a lot of stuff. It was founded in 2003, so we've been doing this for a number of years. We should be able to trust them on that. Does it look to be carefully prepared without errors? So I'm kind of just skimming it right now, right? Like I don't want to put in all the effort of reading the entire article if I'm not sure if it's going to be useful. It looks to be okay. So I'm going to go ahead and give it a little check mark there. So far we're at 6. Purpose. Can I find a mission statement or an explanation for why this work was published? I believe that comes back down to this big idea down here where it said that it wants to do age-appropriate science news. So this one specifically, it doesn't say specifically that this one is published for any specific reason other than that education. Does it seem free of attempts to advertise or sell a product? Ooh, so this one might be rough. All right, this one, register for stuff here, inspire students, that one might be an ad. But other than that, only one ad. This actually might even be for it's an ad for themselves. So I wouldn't go ahead and count that. So yes, free from advertising. Does it try to educate? Yes, I can actually check all of the boxes on there. It's not trying to entertain you. It's not trying to persuade you. It's listed in the medical section, health and medicine, so I know there's not opinion necessarily in it. I would have to read to be 100% sure on that. So I'm going to go ahead and give it those 3 check marks. Okay. Does the document cite sources? So I'm in the 3rd section. Yes. Here are all the sources. Can I contact them? Yep, I can email and tweet her. Okay. Does it appear to be well-researched and factual? Well, can I click on these journal articles? Let's see. Yes, I can go in and I could actually look through each of the journal articles that she used if I wanted to try and make sure that it was accurate. So, cool. And currency and relevance. So this was published January 23rd, 2020, and updated again in February 25th, 2020. Okay, so it's a little outdated. If I'm trying to look at more modern stuff, for what it is, just what is coronavirus, it might be okay. So that one's kind of iffy. You're going to want to use your best judgment on that. Sufficiently current, yes, for most of the things that we're talking about. And are there any indications that the source has been influenced? It doesn't really look like we can tell if it's influenced or shared by anybody, just because it seems to be such an educational site. So I'm not going to give it that one. What that does tell me, though, in here, is that this source has actually reached 17 out of 18 when I count them all up on my little checklist here. Has earned 17 out of 18, which means it is, in fact, reliable. So now that I've gone through and looked at it, figured out all the sources, now I could actually read it and pull that information from it. I know that was kind of a lot to go through pretty quickly. But this is a topic that we want to be very sure that we are being accurate on, because there are so many things that are influencing it. I want to show you this infographic or graph, and it talks about bias in the news. So if you are looking at current news articles, you want to be able to know where they're aligned so you can kind of tell what they're thinking. I'll have this linked up for you as well, but it basically says they have a lot of high quality research, medium quality research, or poor quality research, and then it tells you kind of which way they lean. So if they are leaning more towards one political view or another political view, this is here for you. You're going to talk about it more in Mrs. Karnowski's class as well. So tomorrow, as you start going, I'll actually have this resource link out for you, and you will be able to start looking at already reliable resources to research your topic, and then start looking at resources that you will have to check on your own, just to be sure. So that is that. Today you are basically just going to go through that article that I have given you. You have watched this video. What I would suggest by the end of today, so now that this video is kind of like wrapping up, figure out what topic you want to talk about. You have all these ideas with coronavirus and COVID-19. If there is something that's not on here that you would like to choose, by all means, run it by me when you get to class. But you should have a topic in mind when you walk into class the next day. So that was a lot. The resources are there for you in Google Classroom. Watch this video, and then I will make sure that you have everything to research ready for tomorrow.